On this week of the NFL, we learned who we can trust and who we cannot, the biggest upset we've seen all season long, and a new name enters the MVP conversation. Stay tuned to all this and more coming right up on Sport Chaser. What an absolute bloodbath week 3 of the NFL was. Shout out to Dan Quinn's nose because Marcus Mariota almost stuck him out. But we're just going to jump right into it. One of my 3 games of the week. NFC divisional round rematch between the LA Rams and the Philadelphia Eagles. The Rams took an early lead. It was 26-7 in the third quarter, but somehow the Eagles erased it. 19-point deficit. They ended up winning the game 33-26. How did they do that? Let's find out. Rams looked amazing. Kyren and Corum combined for over 140 yards total. Puka Nacua is looking like 2021 Cooper Kupp with his connection with Stafford. I mean, my goodness, he is unbelievable. And the connection with Stafford for Davante Adams. Davante, still elite despite age, despite all. And the thing is that it was 26-7 in the third quarter. That's a 19-point lead for the LA Rams. And what happens? It was all Philly after that. Philly, Hurts proved that he can still throw the ball. And I know that A.J. Brown had a ton of yards after the catch, and he looked phenomenal. Breaking tackles, stiff arms, trucks, anything you want, he got it. He was able to take charge on offense, drive the Eagles down the field, and they ended up scoring a touchdown with Devontae Smith to win the game. Hurts was able to prove that he could throw the ball still, despite worries after the first 2 games. People were questioning whether or not the Eagles' passing game still had it. They still got it. As much as that pains me to say, they still got it. In the fourth quarter alone, the Eagles had 2 blocked field goals. At the end of the game, when the Rams try and kick a game-winning field goal with time about to expire, what do the Eagles do? Jordan Davis blocks the field goal, grabs the ball, and runs it all the way into the end zone. Touchdown Philly, game over. Oh my goodness, this was just a phenomenal thing to watch because all he had to do was jump on the ball once it landed. But no, he didn't want to do that. He wanted the big boy touchdown, and he got it. He got the big boy touchdown. Jordan Davis, my goodness, that was phenomenal. That being said, the Eagles have won 12 straight home games dating back to last year. This team in Philly is phenomenal. They are the team to beat, and they always have been, at least for the last year or so. And Philly steals the win back from LA, who goes to play the Indianapolis Colts next week. And the Colts have been a great team as well. I want to see if the Rams can bounce back next week because this loss hurts. This loss has to hurt for Sean McVay and the Rams. And next week, they have a huge test against the Colts. They need a bounce back win because this one is going to sting for a little bit. And the Eagles, they're now 3-0. They move forward, and I'll talk about them later, who they play next week. But it's another big one, and you're going to want to stay tuned for that. Moving on, next game of the week, Chargers versus Broncos. What did I say last week about Justin Herbert? He is an MVP caliber player. Justin Herbert is elite. There's a top 4 and there's a top 5. Justin Herbert has entered the conversation. He's been there. You just weren't ready for it. But Justin Herbert, oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. With the Chiefs struggling, both these teams, the Chargers and the Broncos, had a lot to prove. This was their chance to claim the AFC West as theirs. So far early in the season, this was their chance. And the Chargers were able to pull out a huge, massive win against their division rival, the Denver Broncos. This win was spectacular. Keenan Allen, everyone said he was too old returning back to the Chargers. No. 7 receptions, 65 yards, and a touchdown. And Ladd McConkey, he didn't have to do much. 4 receptions, 41 yards, but Ladd McConkey is still a phenomenal receiver in this league. And don't forget about the man who can't catch, Quentin Johnson, catching the ball, catching touchdowns left and right. This was the first game he didn't have a touchdown, yet he still had a great game. This Chargers offense is a problem, and they don't know how to back down, and they won't do it. Shout out Tom Petty, because they won't back down. Justin Herbert on the day had 300 yards to go along with a touchdown. Marion Hampton had 70 yards and a touchdown. On the other side, the Broncos, despite playing well, Bo Nix only had 156 yards and a touchdown. He had no picks. Justin Herbert did throw a pick. But Dobbins proved that this is his backfield. 11 carries, 83 yards and a touchdown. Dobbins He really had a revenge game against LA. It just wasn't good enough. The Chargers are too good. And I know I keep saying Justin Herbert's elite. Let me give you some stats. 300 yards and a touchdown against one of the league's best defenses. One of the league's best defenses and a divisional rival with a chance to really take claim of the AFC West. And he just did that. And their wide receiver production has been spectacular this season. And it has proved true yet again this week. Quentin Johnson, 6 receptions, 89 yards. First game without a touchdown this season. Omarion Hampton, he had just shy of 130 yards from scrimmage to go along with a touchdown and 6 receptions, proving that he can be a sustainable running back. And with the injury to Najee Harris and maybe an Achilles and maybe something else, we're not sure, but there are fears that it is a torn Achilles. So Najee Harris, rest up. Get well soon. But Omarion Hampton can lead this backfield, and this is going to be an elite team all season long as they are now 3-0 moving in to week 4. But before we do that, before we move into week 4, there's one more game we got to talk about. But I'm going to start off with an honorable mention, Steelers-Pats. This one was kind of unusual because the Patriots had over 100 more passing yards and over 50 more rushing yards. Yet they lost this game by a whole touchdown. Why is that? Because the Steelers defense forced 5 turnovers on the New England Patriots. That's why. Steelers are 2-0, Patriots are 1-2. But my third and final game of the week is the Jets versus the Buccaneers. The Jets versus the Bucs. The Jets, the Bucs. You're talking about the team that has Baker Mayfield versus the team that's playing with their backup quarterback, Tyrod Taylor? Yes, I am. Now, why is that? Baker Money Mayfield. That's his new name because that is what he is. He is money when it comes down to it. When there's not much time left and you need someone to throw the ball, who do you call? Show me the money. Show me Baker. Give me Baker Mayfield. Baker Mayfield in 3 games this season has led 3 game-winning drives. The Buccaneers are 3-0. Baker Mayfield is making an MVP caliber case. He's making a case for himself right now, and that is not a name that I thought that we would be hearing, especially after Liam Cohen departed at the beginning of the season. Chris Godwin's been out. Tristan Wirfs has been out. Mike Evans is now hurt. But Baker, he's got it. He's him. He has every tool that you need in your tool shed to be able to walk into any game and win, and that's what he's been doing. The end of this game was otherworldly. Oh, my goodness. 2 minutes left. The Bucs are up 26-20. Jets block a field goal and are able to take it all the way back for a score, taking the lead 27-26. They're now less than 2 minutes in the game. That was at the 2-minute warning, and when that started, the game seems over. The Jets won. They're up. Baker can't do it, and it's less than 2 minutes. He doesn't have the time, or does he? But no, because here comes Baker Money Mayfield. Takes it into his hands to lead the Buccaneers on a drive all the way down into field goal range. And what does Chase McLaughlin do? He nails it. Game over. Buccaneers win, move to 3-0. Jets, they fall to 0-3. Last week, there were some games that I said that we had some things to pay attention to. I want to know, what did we learn? New segment. What did we learn? We take a look at last week's games that I said we need to pay attention to, and let's roll through. So, Commanders-Raiders, first game. I said I wanted to see how Jaden Daniels bounced back after playing a horrible game against the Green Bay Packers. Well, he didn't play. He was out. He was injured. He got injured in that Packers game, and he ended up being sidelined. Marcus Mariota started in his stead. And Marcus Mariota looked good. Jeremy McNichols, is he going to be the RB1? Chris Rodriguez? Because Bill is not looking like the RB1 right now. But Washington dominated. Jalen Lane may be an elite returner, both in kickoffs and punt returns. Debo, too. They both look great. Geno looked okay. Trey Tucker, oh my goodness. 3 touchdowns. Oh my God. Trey Tucker was phenomenal in this game. But the thing that we learned from this game is that Washington was able to correct some of their mistakes. And I know the Raiders are not the Packers, and that was something that probably made a huge difference. But Washington bounced back. They corrected some of their mistakes. And even without Jaden Daniels, they got it done, and they got it done in commanding fashion. No pun intended. Next game that I wanted to learn from, Texans-Jags. I wanted to know. You wanted to know. Does C.J. Stroud have it? No, he does not. C.J. Stroud, I am disappointed. I had very high expectations, and I know the offensive line is terrible. I know. We know. We've seen it because the Jaguars proved it as well as every other team that the Texans have played this season. But CJ Stroud, he has a turnover problem. He's been turning it over too much. When it came down to it at the end of the game, CJ Stroud had a chance to take the lead. He had a chance to drive the way Baker Mayfield drove the Buccaneers to win the game against the Jets, and he couldn't get it done. He threw a pick. And I know that the offensive line makes a huge, huge difference, but you've got to get Nico Collins involved, because Nico not getting involved until the very end when he scored that touchdown is not good enough. Nico Collins needs to be the guy that CJ Stroud relies on going into a game, because he clearly can't rely on anything else. It's a serious, serious problem for Houston. Houston, you have a real problem, and it's not just an offensive line problem. You got to fix your team, because the defense is phenomenal. The offense is struggling mightily, and you've got to fix that. And for the Jags, you can't act like this is all butterflies and rainbows. You have some problems too. Brian Thomas Jr., I have serious concerns for him. He is not getting the ball enough. He's also not trying hard enough, because there have been plays that he's made where it doesn't actually look like he's really going for the ball. Trevor Lawrence, I thought that this was his chance with Liam Cohen now to prove once again why he was a generational talent coming out of Clemson, even at Clemson and before then. But he has not proved that. The Jaguars have problems. So what have we learned? We learned that the Houston Texans have a serious problem that until it gets fixed, we can't say for certain that they are the favorites walking into any game to come out with a win. I cannot say with confidence that the Houston Texans are going to win next week until I see that they can prove to me that they can win. They are 0-3 on the year, despite being the favorites to win the AFC South and make it back to the playoffs. Again, meanwhile, just this past season, they made the playoffs and they destroyed the Chargers, and then they played the Kansas City Chiefs, and they looked okay, but the Chiefs ended up going on to play in the Super Bowl. The Texans are not far removed from that, yet they're 0-3 and struggling mightily, and they're not getting back there the way things are looking right now. They've got to turn things around. And for the Jaguars, what have we learned? We learned that they're unable to prove that Trevor Lawrence is the answer. Straight up, Trevor Lawrence, you got to prove that you're the answer. You were the number one pick about 5 seasons ago. You got to step it up. Next game that I want to find out, what did we learn? Cowboys, Bears. I wanted to know, can Ben Johnson get his first win in Chicago? Yes, he can, and he can do it pretty well. Ben Johnson, there it is. There it is, Ben Johnson. First win as a Chicago Bears head coach. Caleb Williams looked great. People were starting to doubt, but he had over 300 total yards and 4 touchdowns through the air. He had a phenomenal game against this Dallas Cowboys team who struggled. Their offensive struggles, you could probably say, had a huge impact because CeeDee Lamb had a bad ankle injury that took him out early in the game, that kept him out the entire game. But Jake Ferguson was the one to step up, not George Pickens. I thought George Pickens would be the guy who would step up in CeeDee Lamb's absence, but it was Jake Ferguson. He had 12 receptions. He had a sneakily very good game. And we learned that in his absence, that's who stepped up. So the thing that we learned for the Dallas Cowboys was that in CeeDee Lamb's absence, it was Jake Ferguson who stepped up. He stepped up big time for them, despite getting blown out. And for Chicago, what we learned is that Caleb Williams does have that it factor. Caleb Williams can get it done when it matters, that Ben Johnson and Caleb Williams. We learned that this is a duo that could be scary going forward throughout the rest of the season. And this right here leads me into my biggest shocks of the week. What did we watch this week that nobody expected? There were 2. But I'm going to start out with an honorable mention. Jonathan Taylor. Wow. This guy is good. Jonathan Taylor, over 330 yards from scrimmage and 4 touchdowns in his last 2 games. His last 2 games, one of which being against the Denver Broncos. And it's proved to us that when you give Jonathan Taylor a good and competent roster and team, he can perform. This is what he does. Jonathan Taylor, he is that type of player. He can get it done by himself. Obviously, he's got a great team around him. So the offensive line helps. The passing threat helps. Daniel Jones helps. Crazy to say, but Daniel Jones helps. Jonathan Taylor, he's got that it factor, and he has proved that. But moving on from the honorable mention, Jonathan Taylor, into my first shock of the week, the Carolina Panthers. Wow. I did not see that one coming. They faced off against the Atlanta Falcons, a team who, in week 1, barely lost because Baker Money Mayfield decided he was going to drive and score to win the game with less than a minute left. In week 2, they played the Minnesota Vikings, who made the Bears look sorry in week 1, and they destroyed the Minnesota Vikings. And the Carolina Panthers hosted the Atlanta Falcons and made them look sorry. The Atlanta Falcons, yuck. What a disgusting, disgusting performance. Michael Penix Jr. did not look good. He actually looked so bad that Kirk Cousins came into the end of the game. They benched Michael Penix because that's how bad he looked. Carolina offensively didn't play that well either. Bryce Young didn't look great. But one thing that he was mistake-free. He had no turnovers. And the Carolina Panthers were able to force turnovers and score off of them. They had a pick 6. The Carolina Panthers defense was what really shocked me in this game. And I did not expect that, especially after watching Michael Penix, knowing that they have Bijan Robinson, Kyle Pitts, who's, yes, been good this year, and Drake London. I did not expect Carolina to walk in and 30-0 shut out the Atlanta Falcons. But that's exactly what they did. Carolina Panthers looked good. The Atlanta Falcons looked yuck. Yuck. And I want to see how this momentum goes for Carolina. Can they pick up some wins? Can they pick up some steam? And for the Falcons, can they turn this ship around? Because right now, that's not what you want to see. You do not want to get shut out 30-0 against the Carolina Panthers. That is not a good look. But the biggest shock of the week. Last week, my biggest shock of the week was saying that the Green Bay Packers were the best team in the NFL. And what happens right after I say that? They lose to the Cleveland Browns. Cleveland! Shout out LeBron. But Cleveland, oh my goodness. I can safely say that I don't think anybody saw that one coming. This was an absolute heat check for Green Bay. And for the Cleveland Browns, they prove their defense is genuinely elite. Their offense has struggled so far this season, but they've also played now the Packers, the Ravens, and the Bengals in week 1 who had a good defense. The Cleveland Browns, we're going to look back on their draft class and say that that was phenomenal because Mason Graham had a great game. Carson Schweissinger had a great game. Forgive me if I mispronounced that. Kinshawn Judkins had a phenomenal game. He proved that he is the one taking over this backfield, even though later in the draft, they drafted Dylan Sampson, who had good games earlier in the season. But Kinshawn Judkins has looked phenomenal. Despite playing against the Green Bay Packers, he carried this offense. Harold Fannin Jr., despite having David Njoku there, has looked great. Then you have Dylan Gabriel and Shadur Sanders, who they haven't played yet, so we can't really say for certain, but it doesn't even matter. The Cleveland Browns, their defense is good. Not just good. They are elite. Their defense is elite. But the real shocker was the other side. The Green Bay Packers. This was a team that after last week, everyone was saying Super Bowl, Super Bowl, Super Bowl. NFC Championship, first seed in the NFC, yada, yada, yada. But they walked into Cleveland, their first road game of the season, and they didn't get it. They did not get it done. They almost did. It was 10-10 with 26 seconds left. The Green Bay Packers went to go kick a field goal, and what happens? The Cleveland Browns block it. They get it. They get themselves in field goal range, and they make their field goal, taking the lead and the win 13-10 as time expired. That was the name of the game for the Cleveland Browns and the Green Bay Packers. This was a defensive clash. It was a masterclass defensively from these two teams. Something I did not expect to see happen. But that is why the Cleveland Browns are my shock of the week. And that wraps up week 3. And that leaves us moving on into week 4. What are the big games that we need to look forward to? What are the things that I want both of us to watch and pay attention to so that way we can talk about what we learned next week? Well, the first game I want to talk about is the Commanders versus the Falcons. These teams have now faced off 4 straight years, then making this the 5th year in a row that these two teams are facing off. The Washington Commanders have won all of those games. In 2021, they won by 4 points. In 2022, they won by 6. In 2023, they won by 8. And last year, they won in overtime. This year, I think they get it done again. But that's not the important thing. The important thing is I want to know, how do the Atlanta Falcons bounce back? Are they going with Michael Penix Jr. at quarterback again? They probably are. But I want to know, how do the Atlanta Falcons bounce back against the worst loss that they've had this season against the Carolina Panthers? And I want to know, Is that hot streak coming for the Washington Commanders? Because they just destroyed the Las Vegas Raiders. And I want to know, can they come out and prove it against a team who's looked good in the past and who's given them trouble year in and year out? I want to know, will the Commanders make it 5 straight, or will the Falcons finally get on the board against the Commanders for the first time since 2018? That's what I want to know. And the next game, this is, in my opinion, the biggest game of week 4. Eagles, Bucs, two teams that are both 3-0, two teams that have both struggled in games, yet come through when it's mattered most in the clutch. These are two teams who have been fourth quarter teams so far throughout 2025. Jalen Hurts and the Eagles versus Baker Money Mayfield and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. This is going to be a phenomenal game. The Bucs and the Eagles have had great games in the past. In the past, these teams have played, and 2 years ago, they even played in the playoffs where the Tampa Bay Buccaneers destroyed the Eagles. But it seems like the Bucs have kind of had the Eagles' number. In their last 5 matchups, the Eagles have won once, and the Buccaneers and the Eagles have both been fourth quarter teams. This is a game that I expect to come down to the wire. One of these teams will move to 4-0 at the end of this week, and the other will move to 3-1. Both of these teams have a division lead for now, but with a loss, it would make the division race a little bit more questionable going forward. I want to know, which of these fourth quarter comeback teams is going to come away with the victory? Will it be the Philadelphia Eagles, the reigning Super Bowl champions, or will it be the Tampa Bay Buccaneers? And Baker Mayfield, if he wins this game, he absolutely asserts himself in the MVP conversation if he hasn't already. He's built up the resume, and with a win like this against the Philadelphia Eagles, that would absolutely catapult him into the MVP talks. Absolutely, no doubt. The next game that we need to be looking forward to is Colts versus Rams. The Colts, 3-0. Phenomenal start. Talked about Jonathan Taylor earlier. Talked about Daniel Jones last week. They're still 3-0. They walked into Tennessee against the Titans, a divisional opponent, and made them look sorry. The Indianapolis Colts are an elite team, and the Rams are coming off a dreadful defeat to the Philadelphia Eagles. I want to know, will the Rams bounce back? Or is this going to be the start of a slump? Because when you lose a game like that, you feel it. You feel the effects of it. And going into next week against the Indianapolis Colts, that's a team that's really, really good. They've proved that they can beat good teams. They've proved that they can beat playoff caliber teams. They beat the Broncos last week. And I know the Titans are the Titans. But the Colts have been the biggest surprise team so far this year. And now they face the LA Rams, who I think is their biggest, toughest battle so far this season. And for the Rams, they're playing after a terrible, horrendous, dreadful loss to the Philadelphia Eagles after being up by so much and letting the Eagles come all the way back to win that game. That's going to sting. I want to know, are they going to bounce back, or will they feel the effects of that and start a little losing streak? I want to know. That's going to be a big game. The next one, Ravens versus Chiefs. Lamar versus Mahomes. And I know I said last week that the Chiefs dynasty is over, and I still believe that, despite beating the New York Giants. I want to know, are the Baltimore Ravens and Lamar Jackson going to get over that hump against the Kansas City Chiefs? They didn't last year. Can they this year? I think they can. But that is the big question that I want to know. Will the Chiefs prove that they just own the Baltimore Ravens? Or will the Ravens prove that this season is different? The Baltimore Ravens are hungry. They're going to be coming off a game against the Lions. We don't know what's going to happen in that game just yet. But the Baltimore Ravens against the Kansas City Chiefs, will they get over the hump? And for the Chiefs, can they prove me wrong? Can they prove me wrong? Can they prove that they can still beat a good team no matter how difficult the road gets? Can they prove that they still have it in them to beat a team like the Baltimore Ravens that can help them contend going forward? I want to know. You want to know. Stay tuned for that one. And of course, we wrap up next week's outlook with Packers versus Cowboys. And no, it's not because of a rich rivalry, and it's not because both these teams are elite. It is because it is Micah Parsons' revenge against Jerry Jones and the Dallas Cowboys. I want to see him go for 3 sacks. I want to see Micah Parsons tear up the Dallas Cowboys defense. And I know you want to also, unless you're a Cowboys fan. And if so, you might be a little scared to watch this game because Micah Parsons will be coming for heads in the game against the Dallas Cowboys. And his first time playing against the Cowboys in his career. And I want to know, do the Green Bay Packers have it? Will the Green Bay Packers bounce back? Because that's also a big question. I don't think the Dallas Cowboys offense is good enough to beat the Green Bay Packers' amazing defense, especially with Micah Parsons. And I also don't think that CeeDee Lamb will be playing in this game. That injury looked bad. He'll probably be out for a couple of weeks at least. But I want to know, how will Micah Parsons look? The game is not the big question. I want to know about Micah Parsons. And so, with that being said, thank you so much for tuning in to this week's episode. If you liked it, comment down below. What was your biggest shock of week 3? And what are the big games that you're looking forward to in week 4? If you agree with anything, like, subscribe, follow the socials. I'll put them down below. And next Monday, I'll see you guys again. Peace. I want to run away anywhere out this place. I want to run away 'cause you